And don't forget, I was the first one doing this. It was me on my own. I was the first populist. All you Tea Party people, you didn't get started till 2010. I was doing this in 1993. I mean, you know, I nearly became the patron saint of lost causes. But I kept on going because I believe that national democracy is better than globalist bureaucracy. I've always believed that.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Villamont Smith. I'm the president and founder of the Tulsa 9.12 project. Thank you. We start each of our meetings with prayer and pledge, and so tonight we've asked Dr. Paula Price, whose building we are currently in. She just acquired this building. She signed the papers on it about a month ago. I think we're one of the first events to occur in her facility. We thank her so much for all that she does for us. She's also our state committee woman for the Republican Party. She's a great patriot and a wonderful pastor, and she's going to open us in prayer, and then we're going to have Lori Gracie lead us in pledge, and then the first fruits of praise is going to lead us in an anthem. So if everyone, the national anthem, not just any anthem. So if everyone would please rise, Dr. Paula Price.
Bless the Lord. Father, we give you all praise and all glory for who you are and what you've done. Lord, we thank you that you have not given up on us, but you have doubled down on the opposition to see to it that we remain the United States of America. I thank you, Lord, for everyone who put this together. I bless you, God, for Nigel and his team. I cover them with the blood of the Lamb and the angels of God. I thank you, Father God, that what happens tonight is totally on purpose and according to your will. I bless every soul here. I bless you with peace. I bless you with harmony in your life. I bless you also with breakthrough. God wants to do breakthrough even as we're here tonight. We thank you for the ideas that come out, the visions that come forth. But most of all, Father God, we thank you for our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen and amen.
Thank you.
Good evening, Tulsa. Let's join in the salute. Honor, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America.
Amen. I'm proud to be an American. Are you proud to be an American? Go ahead and have a seat. I just want to welcome everyone. I want to say thank you so much for coming out and participating in this event. Tulsa, for those of you that are not familiar with the Tulsa 9.12 project, we're a conservative grassroots organization that was founded back in 2009 under the inspiration of Glenn Beck, when at that time there was a feeling in everybody's gut that we had no idea what was going to happen. Obama had just gotten elected. Bush had just put us through TARP. We were in a tailspin, much like we are now. And we didn't know what was going to happen. And so Glenn wanted everybody to know you're not alone. And that's kind of what the message is again. We all have that feeling in our gut right now that says something's just not right. You know, it just doesn't feel right. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm an extra in a B-grade movie or something, you know, I don't know. But so it was also founded on the 9.12, which the number's 9.12, that we go back to being the Americans we were on the day following the most horrific day in American history, which was 9/11. When we didn't care if you were Republican or Democrat, we didn't care if you were black or white, we didn't care if you were Baptist or Catholic, or if you didn't love God at all. We were Americans. And that's where we have to get back to again today. We have to be Americans, and we have to love our country unashamedly. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Rhonda Villamont Smith. Of course, I founded the 912 Project. I wear many hats. I'm also the county chair for Tulsa County Republican Party. And thank you. I am wife to an amazing husband that for 12 years has allowed me to be an activist. And believe me, it takes time and it takes effort, but he has allowed me the opportunity to be able to do that, and I would be remiss if I did not recognize that. Together we have 9 children. I contributed 7. I just want you to know I'm the overachiever. So I am Mimi to 21 grandchildren. So those are my reasons that I fight. And we all have our reasons why we fight. And over the years, Tulsa 912 has worked together very well with other organizations, including organizations like FreedomWorks. FreedomWorks, I became involved in FreedomWorks right about the time that they did the first government shutdown under Obama, when he shut down all of the parks, and he shut down, they wouldn't pick the trash up on the mall. Remember, he was shutting down the World War II museum. In fact, did I see the McKeechans in here? Wave. There they are. We went to Washington, D.C., and we cleaned up the mall with FreedomWorks and Glenn Beck so that we could welcome our World War II veterans in to see their memorial. And it was an exciting time. And from that point, I've always been a fan of FreedomWorks. We fought together against overreaching laws and regulations. We fought to hold legislators accountable. The battles that we all have fought and the battles that we are going to fight are many. And they're not fun sometimes, and they're hard. And sometimes it just seems like we just need to give up. But we can't give up, because we have to remember the people that went before us, the people that put their lives and their treasure and their families on the line so that we could have our freedom. And yet, like spoiled brats, born with a silver spoon, we let our freedom go. We kind of pawned it off and took it for granted. And we can't do that anymore. So I want you to know that any battle worth fighting, or anything worth having, is worth fighting for. And one of my favorite, he's not a founding father, but he's one of my favorite guys to quote, is Thomas Paine, because I believe that he stated it best. He said, "The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. 'Tis dearness only that gives everything its value. I love the man that can smile in trouble." It sounds like Nigel, doesn't it? That can gather strength from distress and grow brave by reflection. 'Tis the business of little minds to shrink, but he whose heart is firm and whose conscience approves his conduct will pursue his principles until death. That's what we got to do. We have to fight. And we've got to know that we're going to have to, look, we all know that what's coming isn't going to be pretty. It's not pretty right now. It took him less than 6 months to totally ruin our economy and put us in a very precarious position. but we can win. But we can't give up. We can become discouraged at times, but we can never give up. Because giving up means that our children will live in bondage from this day forward because they're not going to get it back. Freedom once lost is lost forever. So I hope you enjoy this evening. I cannot wait to hear what Nigel has to say. I want to be motivated and inspired to get out and do more. But I'm going to go ahead and bring Darcy up here. Darcy is the FreedomWorks director, the grassroots director, I should say, for FreedomWorks. I work very closely with Darcy in different projects and things like this. They do fly-ins, so we go up and we get to learn up there as well. I went up there as DC. I'm so sorry. We just go places, you know. But I want to bring Darcy on, let him talk a little bit about FreedomWorks so that you can find out what they're about, and then we'll get on with the show. Darcy? I'm not even going to try his last name, because if you thought mine was bad.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. Hello, Oklahoma. How we doing? Thank you guys so much for being here. This is only my second time in Oklahoma. Last time I was in Oklahoma City. I don't know if there's any beef, so I'm really sorry about that. I know there's some beef with Texas. I learned that. But it's really great to be here. It's been very impressionable on me, Oklahoma. I've never seen so many freedom-loving patriots so close together. So really appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess the mask thing is kind of gone here. It never happened, so good job on that. Yeah, coming from the swamp where I work, it's really different. It's very, people there trying to control your lives. I guess you guys tell your government here, I'm the boss. So great work on that. So I just want to thank Rhonda again for having us here. Rhonda has been with FreedomWorks probably about a decade, honestly. She started during the Tea Party movement. That's where FreedomWorks picked up a lot of their steam, supporting conservatives like Rhonda, like her 9.12 group, really just trying to push the conservative grassroots and empower the grassroots, because really the grassroots is what gets things done. That's kind of the theme of our tour. Our tour is called America's Comeback Tour, focused on kind of like a sports reference. You know, we're kind of down in the second half, maybe 3-0. We lost the White House. We lost both chambers in Congress, but the fight's not over. You know, we did a lot of work in Georgia during those elections that unfortunately didn't go our way. And a big thing we saw after we kind of looked at the data from the voters that we talked to was a lot of people straight up just weren't voting. They didn't trust the system. They didn't believe that voting mattered. I'm here to tell you it definitely does matter, and we definitely can't just sit aside. That's what the Democrats want. That's what the progressives want. They want us to stop caring. That's what, you know, these big corporations now, they're basically another arm of the government, want us to do. But we can't give up, so we partnered with Mr. Brexit, Nigel Farage, who you'll be hearing from. He is as he says, a happy warrior. In the UK, during the Brexit movement, he was called a joke, a clown, etc. Similar to Trump. And the Brexit movement shares a lot of similarities to the Tea Party movement, where it was just pockets all over the country, regular concerned people saying, I'm done with this. I'm done with the lies. I'm done with the elites telling me how to live my life, and I need to do something. And Nigel himself, you know, spent some time touring the UK, going pub to pub, kind of like how, you know, FreedomWorks does, kind of how the Tea Party worked, just people, how the founding fathers worked, just coming together in a pub, talking about ideas, and eventually saying, you know what, let's take these ideas and do something with them. So we're really proud to partner with Nigel. For me, I think he's the perfect ambassador for what we're trying to do here, which is reinvigorate the grassroots. So thank you guys so much for being here. We have a great lineup. We do have Senator Nathan Dahm, who I know a lot of you are fans of. So Nathan is backstage. I hope he's here. Nathan? Yep. Okay, so Nathan's going to come out and talk to you guys about how the grassroots helps him, how you can all play your role in, you know, getting good small government policy passed. So thank you all.
Good evening. It's great to be with so many grassroots patriots in one room. Appreciate you all coming out tonight. I actually was down in Oklahoma City today and was just notified that we'll be back there tomorrow, but that's not going to stop me from coming up here and joining you all and then driving back down there tonight because I am a member of the grassroots. Even if I am still in elected office, you all know I got my start in the grassroots, and I'm going to continue to stay in the grassroots and with the grassroots because the grassroots is where it's at, right? So thank you all for coming out tonight. I can't sing enough praises for FreedomWorks and what they do. There have been numerous times where they've gotten involved in legislation at the state capitol down in Oklahoma City on different issues and policies that other organizations weren't willing to touch, and they got the grassroots involved and informed and got them down to the capitol to talk to their legislators. You can't imagine how impactful and powerful that is. I can tell you, we get emails, we get phone calls, we get letters from our constituents, from other people in the state, from people out of state. But when actual grassroots activists show up at the Capitol and they are informed, and they are engaged, and they are talking directly with us, that is powerful because legislators know that for every grassroots activist that is standing in front of them, there are dozens of other people behind them that those activists can flip the switch and turn on and get even more phone calls and more emails. And it's not just a real person, it's a really engaged person. It's an activist who is going to fight that fight. So that's one of the phenomenal things that FreedomWorks has done. Even just this year, there was a terrible bill that would have done price controls here in the state of Oklahoma. It was introduced by a Republican, a registered Republican, and would have done price controls. And FreedomWorks got engaged, and thankfully the bill didn't make it onto the Senate floor. It had passed committee, and they were pushing for it, this senator, but FreedomWorks was able to get that stopped so that the free market would be able to continue to go forward here in the state of Oklahoma. So that's one great victory that FreedomWorks accomplished just this year. I can give you numerous other examples of how they've been engaged, but you all know what FreedomWorks stands for. It's the same things we all stand for limited government, for lower taxes, for free market enterprise. Stop me if you disagree with any of those things, but I think everyone in this room understands the age-old adage that Ronald Reagan said, government isn't the solution to our problems, government is the problem. In many of these different things, we're seeing time and time again that government is the problem. I'll give you one example. How many of you have had the, I'll say, pleasure of trying to get a new driver license within the last few months? Have any of you dealt with that? Okay. So if you remember, a couple years ago, Oklahoma finally decided to comply with the federal Real ID law, which is entirely unconstitutional. For over a decade, we had not complied. I had stopped our compliance with Real ID for 3 years at the state capitol. And finally, they said, you know what, we're going to do whatever we can to just ram this through, and we're going to have this Real ID. And so, they said it was urgent because back in 2003, Congress passed this bill saying that it's imperative that we have these secure national ID cards with Real ID. So it's imperative that we do this 18 years later. Obviously, it was so imperative that we're still trying to get this done. So they finally pushed this through. They said, don't worry, we won't have any problems. We've worked out all the kinks. So I don't know if any of you have dealt with the government solution that they came up with, but there's been a few kinks still, right? There's still been a few problems. But a few weeks ago, I was sitting in a meeting and they said, hey, you all have probably received a bunch of emails, just as we have, about the problems with the Real ID licenses, with the driver license, with the non-compliant licenses. Don't worry, we have a solution. And I was so close. I didn't do this, but I was so close to standing up and saying, hey, I appreciate that you have a solution. Can you remind me who it was that created the problem? Because here we have government saying that they're going to provide a solution to the problem the government created in response to the problem government created in response to the problem government created. And it's this perpetuating cycle. That's why we stand for limited government, because government is not the solution. Government is most often the problem. And that's what FreedomWorks stands for, empowering the individuals. But we have the benefit tonight of also hearing from a gentleman, Mr. Brexit himself, Nigel Farage. I actually was in D.C. a week ago. Yes, I was in the swamp, but it was for good reasons, okay? I was out there and got there a day early, and so I decided to go stop by FreedomWorks. And they said, well, hey, we're having a reception tonight, and if you'd like to come out for it, we're kicking off our tour, and Nigel Farage is going to be there. And I said, I absolutely would love to come and meet Nigel Farage. So I had the opportunity to meet him 1 week ago in D.C. at the FreedomWorks reception. Well, I was there for a different conference, so I just stopped by, met him, talked to a few other people, talked to Dursey and some others about what we can work on here in Oklahoma, and then I rushed over to my other conference. And so the other conference was at the Trump Hotel. Great place to have a conference if you have to be in D.C., right? And so we were there. Conference kicked off. We had Mark Meadows, the former chief of staff for President Trump, you know, one of the members of the Freedom Caucus. He was our keynote speaker, had dinner, and then several of us decided to go up into the lobby and continue talking for the remainder of the evening. So we get up there, we sit down. I kind of am looking around, and I look over my left shoulder, and 3 feet away is this gentleman named Nigel Farage. And so I went over to him and I said, hey, I don't believe in coincidences. It's good to see you again, 2 hours later. I'm going to see you again next Thursday in Tulsa. And so I look forward to having you there to kick off your Freedom Tour. But we talked for just a minute. He is such a genuine individual that understands the fight for liberty. He really does understand that this is about individual liberties, and he gets that, unlike many people, even in this country today. Our country was founded on that principle of individual liberties. You all know that, right? The Declaration of Independence. If you don't have a copy of it, Constitutional Grounds is passing them out. Before you leave, you can get one of those. But our Declaration of Independence talks about that we're endowed by our Creator with certain rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You've all heard that before, I hope, right? Raise your hands if you've heard that before. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay. All right. So we've all heard that. And so we understand that the founding document of this country is the Declaration of Independence, and it hits on those things. But we sometimes forget the introduction to the Declaration of Independence. And so I'm going to read that. And it says, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So, as much as I love Nigel Farage, Mr. Brexit himself, I told him this before coming up here, this was the original Brexit. I mean, it was, right? And he gets that. He's not offended by that. He gets that. In fact, when we talk about some of the things in our history, people talk about Paul Revere's Ride. And, that was made famous by a poet and a poem. But people don't realize that when Paul Revere was riding through the countryside, he wasn't saying, the British are coming, the British are coming. Because Paul Revere was British. Right? Okay? That would be like you saying, hey, the Americans are coming, the Americans are coming. No, okay? That wouldn't make any sense. He was saying the regulars are coming, the regulars are coming. And when we look at this document, it talks about that when it becomes necessary, one people must dissolve the political bands that have connected them with another. They have that inherent right. They're granted by nature's law and by nature's God with that inherent right to say, you know what, we're no longer compatible. We need to separate from this system of government. That's what they did under the Declaration of Independence. But that's what this gentleman fought for decades, saying, you know what, the British system of government, the British people are not compatible with the EU. We're different people. We have different principles, we have different goals, we have a different perspective on liberty. And I can attest to that because I've traveled throughout Europe, and I've been over to England as well, to Great Britain. They are a different people. They have different principles. But we have to go back to these foundational principles and understand that we all have that inherent right. The Declaration doesn't just lay out the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It says that we have that inherent right that the laws of nature and nature's God give to us, that if we need to separate, we have that right to separate. And that's what they did here. And that's what he fought for decades. If you want to talk about persistence, this man is persistent. He stood on those principles. And I don't know if you've seen the video, but if you haven't, I encourage you to watch his final speech when he brought up the flag of his country and waved it in the chambers, and they tried to gavel him down and say that was against the rules. And he said, ta-ta, it doesn't matter, too bad, we're on our way out. And he waved his country's flag with pride because he had secured a huge victory for his people. So I just wanted to encourage you all today. One thing that people often ask me, because I've been up in the legislature for 9 years now, and it's taken some fights, it's taken some battles. It took us 7 years to get constitutional carry passed. It's taken us years to get other things passed. And so sometimes it can be discouraging. It can be disheartening, especially if you look at the state of our country right now. It can be. I'm not here to discourage you. I'm here to encourage you. Because if you stay in the fight, if you stay in the battle, if you stay persistent, because most people won't, ultimately you'll win. It might not be today. It might not be tomorrow. It might take some time. But look at the huge victories that can be won. One of my favorite ministers has this quote. He said, "Great victories only come from great battles." So yes, there's great battles before us, but that's how we'll get those great victories. So continue to stay in the fight, continue to stay active in the grassroots, continue to stand for the Declaration of Independence, stand for our Constitution, stand for those principles of limited government, of free market enterprise, these things that FreedomWorks stands for. Stand for God and country, and we will be victorious. God bless you all. Thank you for having me join you tonight.
Yep, I'm good. Thanks, Nathan. Well, how great is Nathan, right? One of Oklahoma's finest. Thanks, everybody, for welcoming FreedomWorks, welcoming Nigel to your state. Obviously, Nathan is one of your very own. We're so proud of him. I'm so glad to hear him bring up the Oklahoma bill that would have imposed price controls on Oklahoma drugs tied to countries in overseas that have socialized health care. Why is that something we want in our country? Something that I always will talk about at FreedomWorks. By way of introduction, I suppose, I'm Sarah Anderson, our Director of Policy at FreedomWorks, so I get to the great pleasure of reading all these wonderfully terrible bills. Something that we always joke about is that when Congress is out of session, it's often better because at least they're not passing these bad bills. So Congress just this week has come back in session after a couple of weeks out. I have thankfully been able to leave the swamp where all of the swamp creatures are currently dwelling. Nathan was with us in the swamp this past week, as he said. And he did bring up this bill, of course, that would have just put us further on the path towards socialized health care. And back to my original point, something that we'll talk about a lot is how the left does not hesitate to say the government is the way to go. Here is a problem in our society. As Nathan said, they'll often even admit that it's a government-created problem, but their answer is always more government. Their answer on healthcare is to say, hey, your healthcare system is broken, you're paying too much for it, let the government take care of it, let us run it, and it will be better. There are so few people left on the conservative side of the aisle, the Republican side, who are willing to say, give the power back to the people, give the power back to the free market, give the power to people who are the ones seeking care. And this goes for healthcare, this goes for education, this goes for energy and the environment. It reminds me of what our director of the Center for Economic Freedom recently wrote in his book on the coronavirus, which is that people don't need a law to protect themselves against what may kill them. So certainly all these lockdowns that we've seen across the country with COVID have been nothing but superfluous to people and insulting to people's ability to take care of themselves, take care of their neighbors, and take care of their friends. I was absolutely astounded. This was the first place I came. Darcy said he's been to Oklahoma twice before, has been to Oklahoma City. I have never been to Oklahoma before. Full confession, I am basically a swamp dweller myself. I was born in Washington, D.C., grew up across the river in Northern Virginia, went to college in another swamp town, Williamsburg, Virginia, although it's a slightly better swamp, a little bit of history there. Then I came back to the swamp. So the perspective of seeing what the grassroots is like across the country is so different from what is going on in Washington, D.C. I was talking about this earlier with one of my friends out in the hall to say, what people actually care about is so different from what actually happens inside Washington, D.C. Every time. So I'm coming here to Oklahoma, and I would never in a million years come here and try to tell you how to live your life, which I think is the absolute point. There's too many swamp dwellers who come to different parts of the country, who relocate people who just tunnel in floods out of states like California, out of states like New York, because they're fleeing the very policies that we know are terrible. And then they come to places like Oklahoma, they come to states like Texas, they go to free states like Florida with Governor DeSantis, and they bring those policies with them to try to tell other people how to live their lives. Yeah, boo, exactly, boo louder. So I came here to Oklahoma, and my first time in this state, I was talking earlier with friend Roger outside, saying that, I drove through Kansas recently. I was making a drive from Virginia to Colorado, and he said, did Oklahoma live up to your expectations? And I said, well, I don't know. The closest I've been here before is Kansas. There are a lot of windmills there. I don't know if there's many windmills here. I was told there's a lot of windmills to the west, but I guess I might have to check that out if I make a drive through Oklahoma. But the point of all of this is just to say our country is so diverse. It's so massive, and there's so many wonderful parts of this country that are so far outside of Washington, D.C. So why do people in D.C. get to tell people in Oklahoma, get to tell people in West Virginia, get to tell people in Nevada, get to tell people in Kansas? Even states like California and New York should have the ability to control the systems and control their people, hopefully letting those people control themselves in the way that they choose to. And one of these areas that it's so apparent this is such a huge problem in these days, and where the grassroots makes an incredible difference, is in education. I mentioned that I grew up in the Northern Virginia area. I went to Fairfax County Public Schools my whole life. I am a hashtag product of public, as was going around Twitter a couple of years ago when people were talking about defending the public education system. And I went to a public college as well. So certainly there's nothing wrong with going to public school, but there is something wrong when bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. and activists on the left side of the aisle try to change the public education system, which is a system available to all students, all young people in our country, to be educated, and instead of educate them, they turn them into activists for radical leftist causes. And beyond this, education has come to the forefront for a number of reasons in this past year, COVID being chief among them. Of course, we saw at the beginning of COVID so many school districts across the country, states imposing lockdown orders where children are unable to go to school. There's so many schools that still remain closed today. Even when the CDC today, although I would wager that they are months and months and months behind on this, said that you don't have to wear a mask if you're vaccinated. Is the sky blue? Is the grass green? I don't know what genius there figured that out, but it's of course something we've been saying for a long time. And something else we know that has been true for a long time is that community spread rates of COVID are lower in areas where public schools are open for children to go to. And all of this is to say that our education system matters. Our students matter. They are the future of this country, and that's what the left knows. And that's why they've mobilized to A, shut down public schools over the past year, make it so that kids cannot be educated in schools, cannot intermingle with each other, and aren't exposed to what kids need to be exposed to grow up as good citizens of this country. Of course, and they've also tried to impose those lockdowns on private schools as well. And so that continual effort by the left and by the unions that back them, I mean, there were screenshots of Facebook posts from a teachers union in California saying, hey, fellow teachers, remember not to post your vacation photos. It's really hard for us to say we have to stay closed if they see us on vacation in the Bahamas. I think that's the case in point on that scenario. And sometimes people will say, well, the only good thing about these schools being shuttered for so long for our students is that now I as a parent am able to see what public schools are teaching my children. And the Biden administration, in a way, has done us a little bit of a favor, shockingly. They have come out and said that they want to offer a federal grant program, which, by the way, the federal government should have nothing to do with education. Nathan was quoting from the Declaration of Independence, of course, another founding document, the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution, we will note, as FreedomWorks does in our letter of support for Kentucky Representative Thomas Massey's bill to terminate the Department of Education. As a side note, did you know that as early as the 1980s, the Department of Education didn't exist? So why is it still here now? Why is it such a radical idea to get rid of the Department of Education? It's not. It used to be actually in the Republican Party platform. So quite simply, of course, going back to the point here, the federal government should have nothing to do with education of our students. It doesn't appear anywhere in the Constitution, and it is not the right of the federal government. It is the prerogative of the states to develop a system that they feel is suitable for the citizens of their state. And then, of course, it's most and always up to the families to choose. But the Biden administration, as I said, shockingly has done us a bit of a favor. Not only have they exposed over the past year just the absolute terrible system that we have in so many parts of the country with public education that is being run by the teachers' unions, not even by the teachers. There are many teachers out there, in fact, that I think would be on our side of this if their teachers' unions didn't pressure them into silence. But furthermore, the Department of Education under the Biden administration, which is a far cry from the one we had under President Trump with Betsy DeVos, has said they want to implement a federal grant program, because why not create another federal program, right? Where's the money coming from? They don't know, but it's coming from us, it's coming from the next generations, and it's being backed by other countries. So if you're worried about American independence, the national debt might be your first place to look. But all of this is to say that this federal grant program they want to create, which of course they say it's not mandating this on schools because of course it's a voluntary program, but we know strings attached federal dollars. We know how that goes from Obamacare, from the Medicaid expansions that were attached to that, that it's just a way to coerce schools into doing what the federal government wants. And what do they want to do now? Impose curriculum of critical race theory across public schools in our country. Exactly. And the reason I say that this regulation, which FreedomWorks is taking action on as part of our Regulatory Action Center through FreedomWorks Foundation to vigorously oppose this rule, the reason it's done us a bit of a favor is it's elevated the discussion about critical race theory and made people aware of exactly what it is, what the 1619 Project is, and why it's so critical to fight against. You'll hear Nigel come out here and talk about how sometimes when it feels like things are at their worst and we don't have any idea how we're going to take our country back, that's when you have the most opportunity. And the reason that is for reasons exactly like this critical race theory regulation, is that it shows the cards of the other side and what they truly want. Which what they want, of course, is to indoctrinate our children with an activist theory, right? Of course, education should teach you about the history of our country, where we came from, teach you math like math, teach you English like English, teach you science like science. But what critical race theory seeks to do is to activate our students, activate our youth into believing that if they are not a person of color, they are inherently racist and there is nothing they can do about it. What does that do to a child's mentality? What does that do to a child's relationship with their fellow classmates? It certainly sows division. President Biden campaigned on unity. He talked about unity throughout his entire campaign. He mentioned it 11 times in his inaugural address. In his address to Congress just the other week, he flipped from unity and started talking about together, 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 together. He repeated over and over. There's nothing less unifying, nothing less together than critical race theory in our public schools. I was talking to Dercy earlier this morning. We were having breakfast, and I can't remember how we got on this topic, but he said, you remember PEMDAS? Learning about the order of operations in school. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You do the parentheses, the exponents, the multiplication, division, etc. And I was like, yeah, you learn the planets. You learn my very eager mother just served us 9 pickles. Of course, Pluto is gone, right? So that planet's out of there. And then in English, you learn how to read and write. You learn basic grammar. You learn how sentence structure works. I read an article, a serious article, I believe it was published in The Atlantic, saying that grammar, proper grammar, is racist. Yes. So back to the original message here is that schools should teach. They should not activate students for one political agenda or another. Math should be math, science should be science, English should be English, and history should be history. In high school, I again, like I said, I went to public school. I was talking with Nathan right before this, and we were in high school government class asked to memorize the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and write that down. Laura Ingram did a segment a couple of weeks ago on my public high school in Northern Virginia that gave its students a survey upon return to school that was a microaggression-based survey. You can look it up. Her segment is absolutely nail on the head for this. It says, one of the questions was, do you think your Asian peers are better at math? The other question, have you ever referred to COVID-19 as the Wuhan virus? Do you believe that some people have an inherent benefit due to their race? And based on the answers to these questions, students were told that yes or no answers, respectively, were microaggressions against their fellow students. The principal of the school put out a statement defending this, of course, and in that statement she said, throughout this past year, our country united behind and supported the Black Lives Matter movement. Our whole nation supported the Black Lives Matter movement? That's news to me. So again, I say this, when I went to Fairfax County Public Schools in Northern Virginia and was very fortunate to have a phenomenal education there, that's gone haywire. I can't imagine that school is the same school where they're still having kids memorize the Constitution. If they're having kids memorize and even read the Constitution, they certainly wouldn't be able to teach the things that they're trying to inject into public schools across our country. And there are some states that have been, of course, further behind or further ahead on this race to the bottom or race to critical race theory, if you will, than others, but it's happening everywhere. And so the reason that the grassroots matters is that real people's voices are what make change. This is what the message you'll hear from Nigel. This is the message you'll hear from FreedomWorks. When I started working at FreedomWorks, I didn't even really know that the grassroots communities existed. Like I said, I was born and raised in the swamp. I thought if you worked in politics, you either worked for a member of Congress or I guess for a state legislature. I didn't think that much about the state legislatures at the time. The federal government was already so big. Or I thought you did some academic research, came out with some polling, went to school for 25 years to produce papers that probably nobody reads. Little did I realize there are so many people across the country who care. And this is what FreedomWorks is activating with our BEST initiative, our Building Education for Students Together. What we are doing is encouraging people to run for school board and change the systems that are destroying our nation's education. And what that means, yes, of course, it started off focused on school choice, on people's ability to access an education for their child that's not based on their zip code. You hear it time and time again, dollars following students is what matters. Of course, over the past couple of months, as it's become so clear from the left that critical race theory is a high priority of theirs, because make no mistake, it's not about race. It's about activating people for leftist causes. They will make kids feel so badly about who they are that they have to support leftist causes or continue to be shamed. I think that's a large reason that so many young people fall to the left, is the social pressure from their peers to support leftist causes. And what critical race theory does is just perpetuates that. So states like Oklahoma, again, thank you to the Biden administration for bringing critical race theory to the forefront, has now banned critical race theory from being taught in public schools. And it's one of many states that are now taking action on this because of the awareness that's been raised to this issue. So you're going to hear from Nigel Farage next. Of course, Nathan did a phenomenal introduction of him before me. I won't harp too much on that and let, of course, him talk about the massive victory that was Brexit. But it is the power of the grassroots in the face of the most extreme adversity and the most radical of government control, whether it's the European Union or whether it's critical race theory seeking to indoctrinate our students. It's the grassroots that makes the difference to bring this down. And that's what FreedomWorks is here to tell you all, not to tell you how to live your lives. Of course, I would not dare dream of doing that, but to let you live your lives as you choose and let your children be educated in a way that makes them proud to be an American, makes them proud of their country, makes them glad to wave the American flag, makes them not think that the Betsy Ross flag is racist like Nike would tell you, or that the All-Star game needs to be moved from Atlanta to Colorado because of a voter ID law. By the way, Colorado has voter ID as well, so somebody didn't do their research there. But with that, I won't take any more of your time and, of course, turn it over to my good friend Nigel Farage from the UK, who, like Nathan said, we had the original Brexit back in the day. But we love him nonetheless. So with that, thank you very much, and give it up, of course, for Nigel.
Well done, you're a star. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Good evening, Tulsa. In this great state of Oklahoma. I've got a feeling this is real America, isn't it? I've been here before. You've got a great state. You're very proud of it. You're very proud of your country, just as I'm proud of my country. And can I say, Nathan, thank you for reminding us that America was the first Brexit. Very kind of you. You see, we went on to build the greatest empire the world had ever seen, but you guys got away from us because you wanted to be independent. You wanted to be free. You wanted to be democratic. And without insulting George III too much, you were absolutely right to do so, and you went on to create the greatest, most powerful, successful country the world has ever seen. Amazing. Now, some cynics, some press cynics have said, you know, what is this Brit? What is this Englishman doing so many miles away from home in a state like Oklahoma? Well, let me tell you something. First point, the most famous Anglo-American that ever lived, and I would argue maybe the greatest human being that has ever lived, was a man named Winston Churchill. And Churchill said there was something special, a relationship between the English-speaking peoples of the world. We shared a common history. We share a common language. We share common law. And apart from those difficulties that finished in 1812, we will do our best not to dwell on that too much. But isn't the truth of it? For the last 130 years and more, your country, my country, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, we were the countries that fought Japanese imperialism. We were the countries that fought Nazism. We were the countries that fought for liberty, freedom, independence, and not just for us, but for the rest of the free world. And you know, when Margaret Thatcher said, when Britain and America are close, the world is a better and a safer place. My goodness me, wasn't she right? Wasn't she right? But I'm also here because there's a bit of me, there really is a growing bit of me that does feel actually quite American. Now, my first job in 1982 was working for an American Wall Street company. I spent 20 years working for American companies. I was one of those, transatlantic weekly commuters. So my whole business life was engaged with America. And then, having done a proper job for all those years, I went into politics with a group of people, none of whom had ever had a proper job in their lives. But after Brexit, I became involved in American politics. I came over after the amazing result we had, June the 23rd, 2016, and everybody said Brexit couldn't happen. It was impossible. Everybody was against it, including, of course, President Barack Obama. This audience is far too quiet. So we'll have another go. I said President Barack Obama. They're warming up. It's slow. It's difficult. But can you imagine this? We have fought beside you in world wars, in conflicts. We've spent lives, blood, and gold together defending liberty in the free world. And Barack Obama came to my country during that referendum and said, if we dared vote to take back our independence, if we dared vote for Brexit, as far as America was concerned, we would be at the back of the line. Wasn't that absolutely disgusting? But I'm pleased to say the British people were so disgusted, I think Obama gave us an extra 1% on the result. So I'm actually quite pleased. We've won our victory, but I'll tell you in a moment how hard won it was and why you must not be disillusioned, why you must end the period of mourning that American conservatives have been going through. And because you've all been too depressed, haven't you? You've all been too, and I get it. Election integrity, questions over mass mail-out ballots, questions over ballot harvesting, questions over what the Biden administration wants to do in terms of ripping up your Constitution, threatening your very republic. I get why you're down. But I will share with you in a moment a story about how we were very down, even after our great victory, but got it back to success. But here's my point. We've got Brexit. We've got Brexit. We're out. We're free. And would you believe? The approval rating for Brexit now in Britain is 70%. 70%. So we're never going back. But what use is it, us being a free, independent country, if America falls to socialism and Marxism? Because you guys are the leaders of the free world. And your battles are exactly the same as our battles. And what you're talking about tonight and at home and in the bars and the golf clubs and the threats that you face to your society are exactly the same challenges that we face. We are all in this together. And I've come here for a 6-week tour. I've come with FreedomWorks because my whole career in politics was based on the grassroots. I wasn't famous. Mind you, I'm not famous now. Oh no, I'm infamous. Yep, as they say, infamy, infamy, they've all got it, infamy. But here's the point. I want America to overcome the challenges that it faces. I want the relationship between my country and your country to get back where it needs to be. None of that was possible under Brexit. And even despite the difficulties, we are the biggest foreign investor in America today. You are the biggest foreign investor in our country. And the shared culture amongst the younger generation is just off the charts. You know, whether it's literature, whether it's film, whether it's theatre, whether it's art, whether it's music, our young people are all watching and looking and thinking the same way. NFL now comes to London and we pack Wembley Stadium. You guys are now following soccer. Now, cricket may be a step too far, and I kind of get that, but I was amazed. On the last campaign, I followed Donald Trump around for the last couple of weeks, and I went to the rallies, and it was all about making America great again. And quite right too. Quite right too. And at every rally he said those 3 beautiful words, made in the USA. Everything was American. The flag, the anthem, everything was American. And as Air Force One appeared on the horizon to come into the airstrips because of COVID regulations, the Donald Trump music played, which became such a feature of all his rallies. And what music was he playing? Elton John, David Bowie, Phil Collins. He was playing more English singers than he was American singers. But that kind of proves the point. I wouldn't even know today, turning on the radio, who was an American group or who was a British group. Our countries, culturally, intellectually, are closer today than they have ever been. And do you know what? I reckon that's a pretty good thing. I really do. So I came here in 2016 in the wake of that astonishing Brexit result. And there we were. It was 4:10 in the morning as the official result was coming through. And I was in training. I was in a nightclub. Because I thought, after 25 years of my life, and don't forget, I was the first one doing this. It was me on my own. I was the first populist. All you Tea Party people, you didn't get started till 2010. I was doing this in 1993. I mean, you know, I nearly became the patron saint of lost causes. But I kept on going because I believe that national democracy is better than globalist bureaucracy. And I've always believed that. Anyway, it's 4:10 in the morning. I'm in this nightclub because I've decided, you know, win or lose, let's have a bit of fun. And the official announcement is due, and the music turns off. And there's complete silence. And we're listening to the BBC. Now, if you think you've got problems with CNN, you ain't seen nothing compared to our state broadcaster, for which we're taxed every year £150. And I could tell the result by the look of the presenter's face. It looked as though World War III was about to be announced. And the official result came, and it was, we're out. So I decided, as a celebration, I would go to Cleveland and go to the Republican convention to see Donald Trump give his acceptance speech. This was our sort of little Brexiteers expedition to America. And I had no idea the impact that Brexit had had on the American people. You know, I'd get in a taxi, I'd go into bars, purely for research purposes, obviously. And bartenders and taxi drivers, they say, hey, aren't you that Brexit guy? It had really resonated in America. And because the reason was that the Brexit vote was the biggest change, the biggest geopolitical change in the Western world since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And the American people got that. So I came and did it. And before I knew it, I was in Jackson, Mississippi. I'd gone, there's always one. You were there. Good man. Good man. There's no excusing taste, is there? So there I was in Jackson, Mississippi, meeting Donald Trump, there with the governor at the time, Phil Bryant, great man, great conservative, great American patriot. And I did a private event, a dinner, where I talked with Donald Trump to sort of key supporters about why the Brexit message mattered to America. Because what we'd done, we'd overcome the odds. We'd beaten mainstream media. We'd beaten the pollsters who told us on Brexit Day we were 10 points behind. We'd beaten everybody. And it seemed to me the Brexit bow wave should come across the Atlantic and be spread as a message of optimism here. So I gave that speech. And after that dinner, it was time for the main rally. 18,000 Mississippians packed in to this basketball arena, and I was so excited. I mean, there I was, backstage. I was going to be a witness to a Trump rally. I mean, wow. And it's starting at 7:30. And at 7:20, Trump comes over to me, puts his arm on my shoulder and says, I think you should speak. I really think you should speak. What? I think you should speak. He says, Nigel, thank you just so much for doing this, and walks away. Well, you were there. I was terrified. I mean, 18,000 Mississippians. I mean, it's not easy, is it? But I got up and gave that message of hope, of optimism, of beating the odds. And you know something? When I finished, Trump shook my hand on the stage and he said, for doing this, you will be my friend for life. Wasn't that nice? And you know what? And he may not be everybody's cup of tea, as we say in England. You know, his style may be a bit Queens, New York. He may upset some people. But when he says you'll be his friend for life, he actually means it. And I can tell you this, I just spent the last weekend at Mar-a-Lago. It's a tough old life for some, you know. But I can tell you, having spent time with Donald Trump and Melania a bit too, over the last couple of weeks, he's lost a lot of weight, he's playing loads of golf. Yes, of course, he's sore about what happened, who wouldn't, given the circumstances of it and the level of demonization. But I tell you something, he's the only American president who, after 4 years of office, looks younger and fitter than when he started back in 2016. So, Brexit happened, Trump happened, and our politics moves in sync. You know, Reagan, Thatcher, very similar periods. Blair, Clinton. Very similar types of people, and I won't blaspheme in a church about them. It wouldn't be right. I'd like to, but I won't. So we move, whether it's in culture or language or politics or trends or fashion, we tend to move together at the same time. Normally, we follow you. Whatever you do, we follow, good and bad. But in 2016, we exported the Brexit phenomenon to you that led to Donald Trump getting elected. Now, our most recent export to you in 2020 was a young married couple who've settled in La La Land. Harry and Meghan is our most recent export to you. And let me tell you, after that appalling Oprah Winfrey interview, I've got some very bad news for you. They're yours for keeps. We're not having them back. We don't want them. Do you want them? No. Well, let's send them off to Bermuda or somewhere like that then. We had won in 2016, on June the 23rd, we had won the most astonishing political victory that has ever been seen in the history of my nation. And the political class had promised us that whatever the result, they would honor the referendum. It was the greatest turnout, the greatest democratic exercise in the history of our nation. And yet, what did they do? What did the big banks? What did the Goldman Sachses? What did the giant multinationals? What did our political class do? They did everything they could from day one to try to denigrate the result. They told us that we didn't know what we'd voted for. They told us we were ignorant peasants. They told us we were virtually racist for believing in a democratic nation state. There was no form of insult or abuse that they did not throw upon us. And we had an entirely treacherous Prime Minister masquerading as a conservative. You've got one or two in the Senate and the House, I think, who perhaps fit this bill. Yeah, they get not you, dear boy, you're all right. But you know, we've seen this for years, haven't we? Career politicians who masquerade as conservatives, and yet there is nothing conservative about them at all, and Theresa May fitted that bill. If you've been feeling down, if you've been in mourning over the course of the last few months about what's happened here in America, and in terms of what Biden may well do, just imagine this. We had it written into law that we would leave the European Union on March the 29th, 2019. We woke up on March the 30th, and guess what? We hadn't left. We had not left. And the globalists at the New York Times, at CNN, in the BBC, in the Guardian, were gloating that Britain had made a mistake and Brexit would not happen. And our people were feeling even glummer and even more downhearted than many of you have felt over the course of the last 6 months. But not me. Not me. Because I'm a warrior. I never, ever, ever give up. And I'd planned... I knew. I could see 6 months before. I knew this betrayal was coming, so I planned and I organized and I re-engaged with my grassroots, the people I'd worked and built up for 25 years. I called it the People's Army, and they were proud to serve in that army. And that is why I'm here with FreedomWorks. That is why I'm here with a grassroots organization who understand that even though grassroots persuasion and campaigning maybe the least glamorous part of politics, actually it is one of the most important. So I'm proud to be here with FreedomWorks, and I commend them for what they do. So I was ready, I'd planned, and I knew because we hadn't left, we had to fight a European election across the entirety of the UK. So I launched a brand new coalition, not just Conservatives, but people on the left of centre as well, who believed in nation-state democracy. You know, some of the old-fashioned left were actually very decent people. It's the modern left that aren't. And I formed that coalition, and within 6 weeks of launching it, brand new political party, we didn't just top the national poll, we got more votes than any other party by 50% of the vote. And Theresa May, the disgraceful, treacherous Theresa May, resigned as Prime Minister before the votes were even counted. I'd got rid of her, and I was very, very proud of it. So all look lost. All look lost. We got it back, and now we've got Brexit. We're out. It may not be perfect, but I tell you what, it's pretty blooming good. And 70% support it. So if we can overcome, if little us can overcome almost impossible odds, I'm pretty sure that America can come back too, aren't you? But there's an even bigger bonus. No, wait, the best is yet to come. As Sinatra said, the best is yet to come. No, the best is yet to come. We haven't just got Brexit and made the Conservative Party in Britain conservative once again for the first time since the great Margaret Thatcher, who was a hell of a woman, I've got to tell you. Hell of a woman. But something else remarkable has happened too. I talked about how some of the old left were decent, patriotic people, and they were. You know, there could be in America bipartisan deals between Democrats and Republicans, and indeed in our country, there could be bipartisan relationships between Labour and the Conservatives. But the modern left is a whole new, different thing. The modern left hate the identity of our countries, hate our flags, hate our identities, hate our culture and our traditions. They are driven, many of them, by a Marxist ideology which manifests itself, and has manifested itself since the horrible death of George Floyd in the most alarming and disturbing way. When Martin Luther King said, "I want my 4 children to be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character," what decent human being would not agree with that resoundingly and in full? And yet the modern Marxists want to divide us up on the grounds of race, ethnicity, sexuality, identity. We're all to be given separate individual positions according to who we are. And the aim of it is so that enmities exist between us, so that we hate each other and we bring down the civilization that we know to be replaced by the new Marxist order. And this has to be rejected. And I'm pleased to say that the British Labour Party have gone down this route of taking the knee to organisations that would destroy everything our countries have ever stood for. And you know something? Working class British people living in the old industrial heartlands, blue collar voters, they may be to the left in many ways than some of us in this room, but they are patriotic to their fingertips. These are the guys and girls who volunteer and put on khaki and have fought world wars against Nazism. Don't tell these people to be ashamed of what our island's history is. We know it's not perfect, but I tell you what, we've done some amazing, remarkable things on our little island over the course of the years. They also, the modern Labour Party, not being patriotic and being globalist, couldn't come to accept the Brexit result. And then the one that really impacts the most, and where the lesson, I think, could be learnt here in America. Living in the big cities, living in London, just as your Democrats, your AOCs and others now live in... You must be half asleep, you lot. I mean, if I mention AOC and that's all I get, I'm really worried about it. They seem to think, living in the capitals, that mass, uncontrolled, illegal, or legal immigration somehow is just fine. What they don't understand is that illegal immigrants coming into a country and automatically getting benefits is a massive insult to those who have legally come into a country and done things the right way. So because of these things, because of the way that the new socialist Marxists in London are out of touch with families who've, in many cases, voted Labour for 100 years, the vote for the Socialist Labour Party has collapsed in England. Socialism is now dead in England. And you have that same opportunity in America. Biden's Democrats, the new left that exists within the Democrats are not patriotic Americans. Many of them actually hate your country, hate what it stands for. And your opportunity to do what we've done in the midterms and beyond in 2024 is phenomenal. So I'm here to bring you a message of hope that we felt very down in 2019. We've now got Brexit, defeated socialism in England, and that's a big message. And just to make things even easier, is you have got a president. Well, do they wind him up at the back, do you think, or? I don't think Biden works for more than about 2 hours a day. Do you see the press conference? He took a question. Oh, my people won't like that. I mean, this is supposed to be the leader of the free world. I mean, he's just an old duffer. I mean, he's... I mean... Now, I'm over a certain age, and younger folk here won't understand this, but just think about the last 24 hours. Queues at gas stations, inflation roaring. We're back to the 1970s, aren't we? We're back to Jimmy Carter. But Jimmy Carter was a damn sight more competent than this bumbling old fool. You have an incompetent administration. The border crisis means 1,000 illegals a day are coming into America, being dispersed across this country. That means that every state effectively now becomes a border state, and this will hit working class communities in Democrat voting areas more than it will hit the affluent middle classes. That is an opportunity. And into the bargain, we now have Hamas firing Iranian missiles into Israel at a level that is disturbing and alarming. I'll tell you something, if Donald Trump was in the White House, they would not be doing that. So I want America to follow recent British political trends. I want you to recognize, come out of this mourning you've been in. Come on, tell me, are you downhearted? Are you prepared to stand up and fight to get America back on track? Do you want to defeat socialism? Will you work hard between now and the midterms and on to 2024 to make sure that America leads the free world, including my country? Well, that's the best I can do. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. What a great audience. I'll come to Oklahoma again.
Well, you come on.
Now, look, do we have time?
Yes, we would
I mean,
make
if
time.
you're not bored,
No.
well then, in that case, I'm very happy to take some questions. So please, whoever wants to ask a question, raise your hand, and we have a microphone here. Gentleman there with an orange polo shirt.
I better hold it. I know him.
You know him? Oh dear.
I need
oh,
to
God.
hold it.
We're in trouble
I need
already.
to hold it.
She knows me. I love your podcast on LBC. Are you going to be doing a podcast again that we can listen to?
Yeah, I mean, the LBC thing, look, I had the most successful talk radio show in terms of ratings that anybody had ever had in the United Kingdom. And you know something? I love doing it because it's the daily interaction with callers, with real people. I hate the political class. I can't stand them. If you've seen my videos from Brussels in the European Parliament, you'll know that the feeling's pretty mutual. I'm not a person that complains when things go wrong. I just move on. The fact that that show ended shortly after George Floyd's murder, and me explaining to the British people what Black Lives Matter really was, namely not a campaign for racial justice, but a Marxist attempt to bring down Western civilization. I said those things, and suddenly the show ended. I'm not going to complain. You can make your own minds up. You're all fairly intelligent. There is a thing called cancel culture. But can I just tell you, sir, that since that time, I've been very busy broadcasting on YouTube. I've got 3 million followers across those platforms, but I am coming back to a broadcasting role very, very shortly. All right?
Well, Nigel, we're over here. Over here.
Thank you so much for coming to Tulsa. What is the, you may have said it already, but if you could put it in really compact form, what is the greatest lesson that we can draw from how you had to win Brexit twice?
Well, the first lesson is persistence, because I was on this battle for 27 years. I must be off my rocker. Either I'm very brave or mad or a bit of both, but persistence is very important. But the real lesson is this. Ronald Reagan, who I think was a very, very great American and a very, very great man. Reagan said, we're never more than one generation away from losing our liberty. And he's right, because there's a bad side of human nature that always wants to control, always wants to take over, always wants to dominate. And it's why history is littered with the bad guys, with the dictators, with those that will kill, those that will steal, those that will do awful things. And to fight it, I guess it's all there in the Bible in a way, isn't it? I mean, we're in a church after all. And so I think the real lesson is to understand that you actually can never, ever take your foot off the pedal. The battle for liberty, the battle for freedom is perpetual. There is no moment, even after great victories, be it 2016 here or 2016 in my country, there is no moment you can ever take your foot off the pedal. The conservative movement, the movement that believes in individual liberty, the movement that believes that actually people need to be freed from government, not controlled by government. The movement that believes in these things is a perpetual fight we must never, ever give up. And I'm proud to say, through the depths of that problem in 2019, that I never, ever, ever, ever gave up. I always believed there would be a second round to this war, and thank goodness I had that foresight. Otherwise, we wouldn't have done it. So none of you ever, ever be complacent about your rights or your liberties. If you want to pass these things on to your children and grandchildren, you must fight for them and work for them every single day of your lives. Which is sad, really, isn't it? It's sad, really, but it's just a reflection of humankind. There are lots and lots of bad guys out there. Hello.
Oh, hello. I am so excited to see you here. And I can't tell you, I was watching when you were in Parliament waving your little flag. I watched that and it was priceless. And I just stood up and cheered for you. Now, my question is, you talk about the globalist, okay? So one of the biggest battles I think we have is the globalist, Agenda 21, United Nations, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. So obviously you're aware of that. And do you have any special tools? I mean, I'm working on, just how to get our legislature here in Oklahoma educated, because there's so many tentacles with the United Nations Agenda 21, 2030 that's been in the process for 30 years or more. So how do you attack the globalists that have their tentacles, the corporations, the globalist corporations? What do you think?
I know. They've been very clever at what they do, because what the globalists have done through the European Union or the United Nations is it happens incrementally. It's little piece by little piece. If you put a lobster, right, into a boiling pot of water, it will fight to get out. You've got to hold the lid down. It feels a bit cruel. But if you put a lobster into cold water and turn on the gas, the lobster just goes to sleep. And that is what happens to national democracies when the globalists, little piece by little piece, increase their power. And they always do it, saying it's about health, it's about safety, it's about the environment, it's about motherhood and apple pie. There's always a lovely reason, piece by piece, to take it away. And it's not always, to be honest with you, it's not always the easiest thing to expose. Otherwise, we're in danger of looking like sort of crackpot conspiracy theorists. I used to really, really be concerned about all these conspiracy theories until I realized they were all true.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
There is no easy answer other than to say this. What responsible nation states should do is to cooperate with people, to trade with people, to be friendly with people, to have reciprocity with people. But at no point should a responsible democratic nation state ever surrender the ability to make decisions to a supranational bureaucratic authority. Right. Friendship, free trade, but not that.
Hi, I cannot believe you're here. Anyway, I wanted to know, you said that they did away with socialism in the UK. Can you explain that? And are they still having national hospitalization there?
What I said was socialism in England was dead. There's still socialism in Scotland, there's still socialism in Wales, but socialism in England is dead. Whilst there is so much we have in common, there are some things that are different, obviously. And I really get upset by this. And I'm going around America, and people keep saying, we like your accent. I haven't got an accent. You've got the accent, not me. We have a nationalized, socialized healthcare system, and that comes directly as a result of the millions of people who were maimed, dismembered, blinded after World War I. You know, World War I was a complete national tragedy for the United Kingdom. World War II wasn't much better. And so the socialist idea that there would be a system that would help everybody was adopted by the country in the 1940s and has almost become the nearest thing we have to a state religion. Whatever its faults, whatever its flaws, whatever its costs, it just isn't going to change. But what I meant about socialism in England today, I mean, we had, just 2 years ago, Jeremy Corbyn leading the Labour Party. You know, goodness, he's so bad, he makes Bernie look moderate, you know. Deeply anti-Semitic into the bargain, a hater of national identity, and he's gone. He's gone. The Labour Party's electoral results are on the floor. They have no prospect of being back in power and implementing an agenda that would bring in critical race theory in our schools and all of these terrible things. For the moment, socialism is dead in England. There are some structures left from before, but it's dead and it's not coming back in my lifetime, in my opinion.
Mr. Farage, thank you so much for coming to Oklahoma. We're so honored to have you here in Tulsa. I think a lot of people in this room believe that Donald Trump got the most votes and is our current president, was ousted in a coup d'etat. So my question is, do you have any advice for how we can overcome voter fraud in 22 and 24?
So on the 4th of August last year, 4th of August, I appeared on Steve Bannon's War Room, all right? And Steve said, okay, Nigel, you predicted Brexit, you predicted Trump, you bet on both and made money. What will happen in the US elections this year? And by that time it was obvious. And we called it postal voting, you called it mass mail-out early ballots, same thing. And I said on the 4th of August, Donald Trump will win the vote on the day, but 3 days after the election, you'll find that he's lost. I said it on the 4th of August. Why? Because I've lived through it. Tony Blair, that great globalist, introduced on-demand postal voting without ID back in 2001. I've seen the fraud this brings. I have actually fought court cases against it. There is no system with mass early mail-out ballots that is not without intimidation and abuse on a massive scale. But there is a solution. Now, having talked about the English-speaking peoples of the world earlier and the bonds between us, the next comment some will appreciate. There really isn't much that the French get right.
Exactly.
Well, apart from lunch and good wine, I mean, they're good at that. And they're lovely, really. But because they're just 21 miles away from us across the water, and we've had 1,000 years of conflict with them, I couldn't resist saying that. Yeah, and Lafayette, I'll get you for that. The French have realized how open to abuse this is. So what they've kept is absentee ballot with 2 verified signatures. So if you're 97 in a wheelchair or serving in the army, you can get an absentee ballot, all right? And that's right and proper, I think we'd all agree with that. And that accounts for about 3% of the votes, all right? The French have completely abolished mail-out ballots for anybody else at all. And to vote in France, this is what happens. You turn up on voting day. Yeah? You turn up. As is your civic right. Not duty, but right. I don't believe in compulsory voting. I believe it should be an option to do it. So your civic right is to turn up at your designated local school or church hall or whatever it is, and to show somebody a photo ID to legitimize who you are. And then you'll never guess what happens. It's amazing. They give you a piece of paper with the candidates' names on. You go into a polling booth in secrecy so that no one can see what you're doing or intimidate you, and you put your cross next to the candidate or party that you choose, you fold it up and you put it into a sealed box. And that box, when polling is closed, is emptied and counted manually. Manually. Not counted by some computer system of dubious distinction, but it's counted manually and put in bundles so you can see the bundles on the table at every one of the thousands of halls around France in which this is taking place. Then they're added up and put together, and there is a winner and there is a loser, and there is no dispute that a free and fair election has taken place. So, all I can say is, America, learn from what the French have done, and all of you fight at every level to stop mass mail-out postal voting. It is wrong. Right, this is the last question. It's the last, because I can see you're getting bored of me. So this is the last question. So come on, make it a good one.
All right. You were with Trump recently. Did he say he would be back tomorrow, or would it be a couple of months?
Well, one of the reasons that I'm so friendly with Donald Trump is he's been surrounded by people who've all used his words to try and make a quick buck off the back of him, all right? I've never in the last 6 years ever publicly said anything he said to me face to face or on the telephone. I would never betray that confidence, and I think given the extraordinary pressures that he's been under, he needs a few people he can really, really trust. And you know something? He can really trust me. He can really trust me. What I can tell you, I'll repeat what I said earlier. He's looking good. He's looking sharp. He doesn't like the concept of losing anything ever because he's an alpha male. Do you know what? Donald Trump's the only person I've ever met. He's the only person I've ever met that makes me feel like an introvert. I mean, it's just so full on, it's not true. I'm also very honored to be the only British person that has ever spoken in a US presidential election. And I spoke for Trump in Mississippi in 2016, and I spoke for Trump in Arizona in 2020. And I think this man, and if the party can find someone better, that's great. That's great. And there are some good people out there. DeSantis in Florida, what a great job he's doing. Great job. Great job. And he spoke at the FreedomWorks conference at Amelia Island a few weeks ago. Great job. But what I will tell you, and I'll finish with this, what I will tell you is what I said to him. So I'm in his office in Mar-a-Lago. This was a couple of weeks back, before the weekend's partying, so I can remember it clearly. And he said to me, "What do you think I should do?" I said, "You know what? If I was 74 and I owned the greatest portfolio of golf courses any individual's ever owned, and I had the ability to go back and do a TV show that would dominate in a way that nothing in America has ever done before, and probably make billions of dollars doing it, and if I had a wife like Melania and a family that was around and close and loyal and faithful," I said, "if I had all of those things, there wouldn't be a contest. I'd know the right thing to do." I said, "But I'm going to tell you this, whether you want to hear it or not. The problem is, I can't think of anybody that has your courage or your charisma. And therefore, unless somebody else comes along that you can anoint, you have no choice but to continue and to fight for the things you believe in, because nobody else will do it apart from you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Been a great evening. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Hope you enjoyed it. Good. Great stuff. Come on, quick selfie. Go on, do it. Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks.
You guys, was pretty awesome, huh? But we have to take that message from out of here, and we've got to take it out onto the streets, and we've got to take our country back. We're going to go after that bond that Tulsa Public Schools is getting ready, is asking for. $414 million on June 8th. You're right. Thank you, George Weiland. So we need to fight this. And we are going to put together, we do have a plan to put together a campaign against it. And from there, we're going to go to school board races, because we filed for school board in December. And so there are two spots in the Tulsa Public Schools that are open. And there's also going to be one spot in each of the surrounding communities. So that's our second battle. Our third battle is going to be for the city council in 2022. And guess who runs for city council in 2022? Well, not Broken Arrow and not Sand Springs and not any of the surrounding areas, but all 7 seats of Tulsa City Council are up for re-election. So, we plan on being very active over the next year to year and a half. And this is me with my, I guess, Republican Party hat on right now. But we plan on being very active, and we got to be proactive, and we've got to get busy. And it's going to take money, and it's going to take people, and it's going to take ideas. So I want to encourage everybody. We've won battles before. We know how hard it is to win battles. We've beat Common Core. We got the critical race theory taken. Listen, guys, your phone calls work. Your emails work. Your trips to the Capitol work. They love to see you at the Capitol. They really do. Sometimes Nathan has popcorn ready for you if it's a especially good group. So please, guys, stay in touch, stay involved. Next month we're going to have C.L. Bryant. We're going to be meeting here again. We won't be in the sanctuary. There's another room that we're going to be meeting in. But that's June the 10th, and he's going to bring a very motivational and inspirational message that's going to make you, I'm telling you, wear your Superman t-shirt under your jackets, because you're going to feel like Superman when he speaks. I want to say thank you very much to Dr. Paula Price for the use of your facility. Thank you so much for coming out. We hope to see you June 10th with C.L. Bryant.